Welcome everybody. This is Effective Bug Handling in Drupal, Strategies for Success. You can find these slides at this bit.ly link, bit.ly nedbug24. There's a QR code. I'll have a bigger version of it at the end of the presentation if that's too small to take a picture of. This is my first time giving this talk, so it's brand new. You are the first people to hear it, so congratulations. Maybe that's I guess I'm a little too cocky to say that. So who am I? Mike Miles. I've been working in Drupal since 2008. I'm the director of web development at MIT Sloan, where my team and I are responsible for the public-facing websites of the school. I help organize NetCamp. If you want to know any more about me, you can find me at mike-miles.com. I'm not really on social media, but that can take you to my LinkedIn and my old podcast that I used to do. This one's chance. Encounter an unexpected error. Try it later. Who's ever seen something like this? Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody. Everyone's seen this. This is a pretty generic bug message in Drupal. And the thing with this is when you see this, what happens next? Panic, usually. It's either you're the developer and you notice this and you panic, or even worse, your boss tells you that this is happening and you panic. Even worse, end users see this and they panic. They don't know what to do. So usually this causes panic, and then panic makes it hard to fix it. But why does it cause panic when you see this? Well, one, you don't know what's going on. You don't know if you did something wrong. People don't understand what's going on with the website. If you have site editors, if they did something wrong, they broke something. So it all boils down to, I think, a lack of trust. When we see these bugs happen and we panic because we don't know why they happen, so we have a little less trust in the system, the team that manages it, or our workflows that have process in place. End users don't trust the institution that the website's for. If they're like, well, your website's not stable, I'm trying to register for something, I don't trust that everything went through. I'm not going to do a credit card transaction again. So I think, and this is, I could end the talk here, but really the most effective strategy for handling bugs is to build trust. You want to build trust in the team that maintains the Drupal website or product, trust in the system, so in Drupal itself or the ecosystem around your website, and then trust in the processes that are in place, one, for making sure the website's up and running, but two, that are in place for when bugs do occur, that the team and the system can handle it. Because bugs are going to happen. Humans, majority of the time, still write code and build the websites, and humans are not flawless, so our products are never going to be flawless. So this talk is not going to tell you how to get rid of all your bugs, but we're going to talk about how to build trust in your system, in your team, and your processes when bugs do occur. And I think it breaks down to these areas: clear communication methods and establishing those. So when something does happen, or when something does happen, how you're going to let people know about it so they don't panic. Effective treatment methods. So when you do have a bug that occurs, whether it's the whole site going down or the style issue, there's processes in place for the team that's responsible for it so they can quickly diagnose and resolve those issues. Establishing preventative measures so that if you catch bugs before they go to production, because if no one sees it, then it's not a problem. And then steady improvements over time, learning from what's happened in the past to make things better in the future, so you have less bugs and your team can focus on more important things. And I know this is all kind of high level. Maybe it's not what you're expecting for a talk on bugs, but don't worry. In these two areas, I'm going to have some Drupal specific takeaways and actions that you can do that are a little more hands-on, so that it's not just like ethereal, like here's what you should do. It's like, here's some actual things you can do. All right, so communication. This is all about building trust in the system by preventing panic so that people know what's going on. Because if they are informed and they're aware that you're informed and you know a bug's happening, they're going to panic less about causing a problem. And there's two sides of this communication. There's informing your communities and allowing them to inform you, right? You need to have communication methods established for your team or the team responsible for the website so that they can tell users, here's what's going on, we're aware of the problem, here's what we're doing to fix it. On the flip side of that, you need ways for people to tell you that there's a problem, because 9 times out of 10, if there's a bug in production, it's not the development team that catches it. They would have caught it before then. It's users of the website that catch it. And so you want to make sure if they catch a bug that they can tell you about it quickly and give you the information you need so that you can diagnose it and help resolve the problem. Whether fixing that takes a long time or not, that depends on the bug. So let's talk about informing your communities first. Again, the website encountered an unexpected error. Try again later. When this happens, or you're anticipating this is going to happen, there's some questions you should ask yourselves as a team what you need to do in terms of communication. One is, who needs to know about this? Why do they need to know that this happened? How are they informed that this has happened? And then what do they need to know? And depending on who uses your website, their expertise or their experience or what they focus on, how you answer these questions are going to be different. It's not going to be the same for every group of people that you want to contact. So who needs to know and why? People who are directly impacted. So your content editors, right? Your authenticated users. If the website's down and broken and they can't use it, you want to let them know that, hey, hold off trying to create content. We know there's a bug in the system. People who are loud. So if you have stakeholders or clients or people who aren't directly involved with the website, but when they notice something go wrong, they like to tell people about it. Like you want to get to them quickly and be like, hey, don't raise alarms. We know there's a problem here and we're working on it. So people who are loud, you want to write a list of those people so you can reach out to them. And then people who can help. If someone notices there's a bug on the website, regardless of the severity of the bug, you want that information to get to the team who can help fix it or who can help manage the impact of that bug. So that could be like project managers who have to talk to the client, be like, hey, we know this issue just occurred. The dev team's looking into it, for example. So how you inform these people, I think it depends. But there's some general things you can do. Is one, make someone responsible. So if you're the team responsible for the website, either set up a dedicated role, or what my team does is we rotate every week. Someone on the team is the bug manager, and they're responsible for communicating about bugs to our end users or our content editors mainly. So if you set someone responsible, that's going to have that path set up already, so you don't have to panic. Be like, well, who's responsible? Who's going to tell someone about this? Like, it's not my job to do it. Like, you know who's going to do that. So you can share or set up bug monitoring duties, not that person has to know how to fix the bug, but they have to be aware that it's happening and who they're going to tell about it. Select a communications channel to do this. And I think this depends on your audience. But if it's internal, like editors, maybe you have Slack or some other internal communication method, like a special channel for it. Email, obviously, could be helpful. A status page. For end users, like site visitors, status page itself, as one word, is an Atlassian product. I like to use it. A lot of companies use it, where you can quickly push out messages, be like, "Hey, we're having this issue. We're aware of it. The team's looking into it." And use an appropriate tone. And this can also vary depending who you're talking to. You may realize that the whole website is down, and you don't know why, but you don't want to tell the client that, oh my God, we don't know what's going on. The dev team on your fellow developers, you may want to react that way. But if the people who are less understanding, you want to be like, hey, it's no big deal. We're looking into it. We're gonna solve it. Because most of the time when we're dealing with websites, it's really usually not that big of a deal if there's a bug that happens, especially like minor ones. The whole website going down may be different, but you want to give them an air of you want to let them know that you are aware of what's going on and that you can handle it, even if you're freaking out inside that you can't. Project confidence, and that'll reduce panic in the system. And then provide only relevant details. Again, this depends who you're going to message and when you're going to message them. So end users, like site visitors, they don't need to know like that it's a specific module that's causing the problem, or that you're aware of like it's a developer workflow or a specific node and field or view. Like they don't need that detail. And the more technical details you give someone who's less technical, the more panicked they're going to be because they don't understand what's going on. So pick and choose, like write out which audiences you want to reach out to and think about what do they actually need to know. Does it need to be more generic or more detailed? Obviously the dev team, as many details as you can give them will be helpful. Why did it do it twice? All right. Oh, it's a different slide. Oh no, it's the same slide. All right. Here's an example of a status page. So this is the MIT Sloan website. We have a status page. I forget the domain of it. It's like MIT Sloan status .mit.edu or something like that. Only really our site editors look at this, but it is available for the public to view, which means we're careful with what technical details we put on here when a bug happens. But where people can see like the website's operational, deployments are operational, our management tools are operational. And this can also be helpful in the future when we're diagnosing things. If there is a bug, we can look here and be like, is it any of our systems? Or we connect to some of our third-party systems like Pantheon. Has status page that we can feed into here, so we can see like, oh, there's a problem on the Pantheon side, or Circles DI, or GitHub, or whatnot. So what do you tell them? These 3 things. What has happened, how it's being dealt with, and when and where to expect an update. Now, again, the details you give here will depend on which audience, but these are the general 3 things you want to cover. Like, I'll just say the general one, right? We know there's a bug on article pages. The dev team is currently looking into it. We will report an update to the Slack channel in the next hour. Right? That gives people enough information to feel like it's being handled and less panic, and they won't like doom click buttons to try to fix things. And that gives your team time to actually investigate and come up with a good solution. So let's flip to the other side, communities informing you, because that's very important. Again, most of the bugs that happen on a Drupal website are going to be told to the dev team. The dev team is not going to catch them, because if they did, hopefully it'd be before it gets to production. Again, website encountered unexpected error, try again later. Questions you want to ask when you're anticipating this is going to happen, or you're planning for this, and how people can tell you it's going to happen, is who can raise bugs? Who do you want to be able to actually inform you that this has happened? How can they alert you that a bug has happened? And then what information is critical that the team needs to help diagnose the cause, and a solution? So who can raise the bugs and how? This will depend on the nature of your website or your product, and who interacts with it and how they interact with it. So site visitors, maybe through like web forms or a contact email address that's somewhere. Though if your whole website's down, how are they going to fill out a form or get the email address? So that's another good reason to have like a status page, because it's a separate system that you can put a contact on there. Internal site users, people who are directly impacted, right, when the website goes down. So again, if you have an internal chat platform that you can connect people to, a shared email address that's in your user guides, maybe to like who to reach out to, even just like help at whatever. Whatever. For the chat platform, one of the things my team does that we found helpful, also kind of for a shared email address, is all our internal users, all our site editors go through training. And at the end of that training, we send an email. And part of the email is, here's the bugs channel you should be connected to in Slack. Here's an email address to reach out to if there's any problems. So that they have that in their history. They may not remember they have it, but we like to inform, especially new site users, that this is the information how to reach us. And then obviously team members, they should be able to raise bugs. And again, internal chat platforms, email addresses people know about. Only for very, very bad bugs is text or phone calls, and they know who to reach out to, like on the dev side for that or the product side. But team members, and that's not necessarily the dev team or the team responsible for a website, but people who are related to it, like again, project managers or clients or stakeholders, that they can raise bugs and they know the appropriate channels to do it. So they're just not messaging some random person, or they're raising alarms in like a more general chat where people are going to freak out about it. So what critical information do you need with dealing with bugs? Most importantly is, where did the bug occur? If you're not going to get anything else, this is the thing you want to get from somebody: a link to the page. A lot of times we'll run into the issue where in our bugs channel, someone will report an issue and say, hey, I'm at this page doesn't look correct. And they'll do a screenshot of like just part of the page. Like the first question the bug manager asks is like, hey, can you provide us a link so we can see what's going on? Because that screenshot doesn't really help most of the time. So ideally you want just a link to the page at the very least, and you can start doing investigations from there, which we'll talk about in the next section. The information you want to know, is it still happening? Because it could be a one-off thing, you still want to investigate that, but ask the person, great, is this bug still going on? If you go to the page, can you see that it's still happening? That's important to know, and that can help you when you're looking to triage the issue and to figure out what's going on. And then what actions were being performed at the time? Ideally, they can give you a list of steps to reproduce the things they were doing when the bug happened. Those steps may not be directly related to the actual bug, but it'll help you try to replicate it, hopefully on a lower environment if you can get that up and running as close to production as possible. But at least to know what someone was doing to make that bug occur can help you diagnose things that might be related or to knock out things that are not related. And then what type of user was performing the action? If it was just a site visitor, that can help direct. Obviously, it wasn't them editing content that was causing the problem. So if you know that, then that can help stop you from looking down dead ends. If it's someone who's logged in, they're saving a node, right? If they're an authenticated user, you could know what their user role is and then see if other users of that role are having the problem or if it's everybody who's logged in. Knowing what type of user was performing the action will help you later on understand and figure out what's going on. All right, so that's setting up communication. Let's talk about treatment. This is obviously determining the cause and implementing a fix to fix the bug. Well, fix is a loose term, but the treatment process is 3 phases. Determining the cause, whether that's the root cause or just a superficial cause. Developing a fix, which we're going to spend most of this section talking about, and then deploying the solution. For the deploying solutions, I'm not going to talk too much about that because that's going to very much depend on your individual processes and what you have set up. But you want to make sure that you're thinking about that in your treatment process. So for determining the cause, again, you get this error. Questions you want to think about when you're trying to solve the problem is going back to that first section, who's experiencing the bug, right? So this could be who reported it to you, but you want to dive in deeper to think about what people may be affected by it. Where is the bug happening? Is it on one page or multiple pages? Is it only when you're logged in on the admin side? Is it on the front end side? Is it with an external system? Because we can't replicate the problem in Drupal. What's happening on the site at the time? This is separate from what the person was doing. You may want to look through logs and think about, well, what else was going on? Because that could have impacted and caused a problem. So in terms of who is experiencing the bug, it's usually broken up into 3 groups. Single user, a specific user role or multiple user roles, or everyone. And I like to use these to help diagnose bugs quickly, because if it's one user who's experiencing it and no one else can replicate it, usually, not all the time, but usually it's like a cache theming issue in their browser. So getting them to open an incognito window, do you see it there? Is usually that fixes a lot of it. Specific user roles, obviously those will help you determine maybe suss out what permissions they have or they don't have. That may have caused the bugs. Maybe some permissions changed. And if everyone experienced the issue, then you could think it's not a user-based problem. It's a system-based problem. It has to do with the code that's impacting pages. In general, the impact of a bug goes in this direction. So the more people experiencing it, the higher the impact. It depends who that one user is, though. Right? If it's a really loud person that writes 90% of your content, then that might have a greater impact than, say, it's for specific editors, because not all your editors log in. So where is the bug happening? Again, this, I think, is broken up generally into 3 categories in Drupal. On the display theming side, this is generally if something doesn't look correct. Most of the time, it's on the display theming side of things. So you could think about in our custom theme or our templates, has anything changed recently? What templates or themes are involved on this page where the bug is happening? The functionality side, this is when something's not working as expected. It could be a form's not working, views aren't not working, people aren't able to edit content correctly or use the Drupal admin. This could relate to what modules you have installed. Maybe you updated a module and that caused some regression issues. So that can help figure that out if it's functionality impact. And then data. Something was not stored or retrieved correctly. This usually has to be involved with the database, but usually it's related to the functionality related to saving or retrieving data in the database because it's being manipulated in some way. So that could be a pre-processed hook that's involved with it. But you could start to look into your data and be like, hey, if we get it directly from a query, does it look correct? If not, we know we have a problem saving information. If it is correct, we have a problem with how we're getting it to the theming layer and displaying it. Again, generally, I think of bugs in terms of severity. for where it's happening in this direction, because if your data is being stored incorrectly or retrieved incorrectly, that's usually a bigger problem than if something is like a few pixels off. That's not as big as severity to me. That doesn't mean it's not important. And then what is happening on the site? To figure this out, you could check the logs, like the database log, which usually you go to admin reports, recent log messages. This is where it's good to know and figure out what else was going on the site at the time of the timestamp. And if someone just gave you the link, they're like, yeah, this was a few hours ago at some point this happened. I don't know when. If you can replicate it, then you can go check your logs as to see your timestamps and see what else was happening at that time. If you have a lot of error messages happening, your database log. Or you can even use browser console logs or network activity if it's happening, nothing's reported in Drupal, but you can see it on the page. Is there like an external service that's failing so all your JavaScript stops working? Or is there just something screwing up the CSS on your page? Review what was recently changed. Do I have a subpoint for this? Yes. Have you recently deployed any config changes or has anyone on the team made any config changes on the website that could have impacts that could cause a bug that you didn't catch in some sort of regression? So you want to talk as a team, like, did we recently change anything? Have we recently deployed any new code? Have we enabled any new modules that may have been impacting or working the way we didn't expect? That's not always the case, but if you narrow these down, then you can see if we revert this change, is the bug still occurring? And you can quickly diagnose yes or no. And then if you need to, list out the functionality involved where the bug's happening. If the whole page is down, you can think about what modules, what content types, what user roles, what views, etc. If you can figure out what may be involved, you can start stepping through them and seeing, is this working as expected? Is this working as expected? And narrow it down then. And also then third-party code, like modules or JavaScript or external applications. And this could also be what's involved with delivering the page. So this could be your services like Pantheons or your Acquias. Maybe there's a problem on their system and your code didn't deploy correctly, or your CDNs or your DNS, whatnot. Now, to develop a fix, there are two types of fixes for solving bugs. There's the quick fix, which solves the problem now, and there's the long-term solution, which prevents it from happening again. Ideally, you want to always do the long-term solution. And sometimes the quick fix is the long-term solution. If you discovered there was a missing semicolon, that's the long-term solution. But it depends on the severity and the impact of the bug. If it's a really high impact and like everyone's experiencing it, you don't want to have to be like, well, it's going to take us 2 weeks to really solve this long term. You're not going to have that bug going on for 2 weeks. You want to do the quick fix. Like, what can we do now? Maybe we have to do some extra steps like constantly clear cache, which is bad for the server. But if that's going to quickly fix it and it's a high traffic time, maybe you are going to maintain that and do those extra steps while the long-term solution is being developed. So for quick fixes, clearing cache and running cron, as much as I hate to do this, I used to have a custom drush command called magic, which when someone reported like the website doesn't look correct, I would run drush magic, and 80% of the time it'd solve it. And now that's not a great long-term solution because that means there's issues going on with how data is being cached or stored or built that you want to solve. And this puts a lot of strain on your server and resources if you get rid of all the cache. But if like you need to solve it now, try that. Like, all right, just quickly solved it. We can move on for the moment. Updating config settings. If you determine like, oh, there's a problem, we changed the view, or these node settings, or this user role, we accidentally remove these permissions. You could, in your production environment, go through the Drupal admin and export a single config item. Install it locally if you don't want to like wait for your build time. Say you're building your local environment takes a long time and you have to do this quick. You can import it locally, make the changes, export it, and then re-upload it through the Drupal admin. And you could change it that way, which depending on your deployment processes might get reverted later on, but you can quickly make the change live and then add it back to your repo so that next time you do deployment, it does get reverted. And then this is very dangerous, but you can execute drush commands. It depends on the commands you run, but like if, what's a good example? If if data just wasn't stored correctly and you have to like quickly write a database query, you could execute that through Drush through PHP. This one you can do to quickly fix something. However, this is the one you want to test locally a lot if you're going to do this, and it's quicker for some reason than doing a full deployment and fixing the long-term solution. But you can't do that. You need to like quickly fix like 100 nodes because you messed up a reference or something. You can write Drush commands to execute the PHP code and do that. But be cautious with that. So some long-term solutions in terms of Drupal is updating config. A lot of problems have to do with config changes. Update it. Make sure things are configured correctly, like your nodes and your views, and then push those updates through your build process. So entity settings, user permissions, views, etc. Those are the bugs. These are how you want to fix them. You may want to go in and figure out, if it's not functionality related to it in custom modules, then it's usually a permissions config issue. Update the theme for display issues, your CSS, your Twig, your theme hooks. If these are involved with causing problems, these are what you want to fix, right? Styling issues, you want to fix through the CSS and compile that, whatever you have to do for your theme to make the long-term solution. And then update custom modules. They're your hooks or your event listeners. If you determine those are causing the problem with how you're retrieving data or modifying it for display or saving information, you want to update your modules accordingly to fix those problems, add new hooks, add event listeners, etc. Again, this is going to depend on what the problem is, but this is the more of a longer term solution. This can also be a solution if you're dealing with a third-party module, like a community module that there's no patch for, or it works in a slightly different way, but if you can hook into their hooks or their event listeners, then you can manipulate the data further if you need to. But try upgrading if you need to, patching, or ultimately using a different module service if you have to. That's definitely a real long-term solution because that can have impacts your system. And then potentially long-term solution could be a change in your workflow or your system. Is the way you deploy your code to your production environment, is there a flaw in there that you've discovered that's causing this problem? So revise what you're doing and how you're getting stuff to production. That will be a long-term solution. So for deploying a solution, again, this is the only slide I have for this part, because it varies very much differently. Everyone here is on a different team. Your deployment processes are very different than everyone else's. So however you have to deploy a solution, a quick fix, again, could be working directly on production. Hopefully you have developer modules turned off on production, but if you have ways to manipulate stuff on production, if you have to do it for a quick fix, you can do that. But ideally you have a solution that you can, I like to use scripts and robots to do my deployments, so it happens the same way every time that you're doing that for your long-term solution, so it's worked into your process. All right, prevention. This is stopping the problem before it's a problem, right? If the bug's not a problem, or at least if it's not a problem on production, no one's going to panic about it. If you see it on your local environment or on a test environment, QA environment, it's still problematic because you have to solve it, but it's not a panic-inducing situation, right? Because it's not live data. So anything you put into place to prevent bugs from happening is what you want to do. So areas of bug prevention, broken into 3 again. I see them as development, deployment, and documentation. These are the 3 pieces of your workflow and your projects where you can put in preventative measures to stop bugs from going out. So in development, we can start with the developers' environments. Make sure that they can emulate production as close as possible. So if you're using DDev or Lando, these are ideal so that you can pull down databases, scrub them of any personal information that you need to. But you want to make it easy for developers to have their environments set up to production so that they know when they're building a solution, they don't have to be like, well, we'll wait and see what it looks like. You want to make sure that they can be secure in knowing that if it looks well or it works well in their local environment, it's going to work well in production. And that they have the processes in place to pull those down. Things like also using stage file proxies for images. This can be helpful so that you're getting more realistic content and you don't have to pull down all your site's media locally, but you can still see it with real images and you don't have to deal with broken images. Making it easy to update and refresh. Years ago with my team, the process for rebuilding your local environment was so painful that the developers will only do it like once every 3 weeks at the most. because it took them like a whole day to update their local environment for some reason. This is before we used DDev. But now, like, I can run one command, and that custom script will do everything it needs to pull down a database backup, to install composer updates, and rebuild my local environment within like 20 minutes. Which, for me as a developer, not have to remembering a list of a whole bunch of steps and local things to change, that makes me more likely to refresh my environment to make sure it's up to date. So when a bug does happen, I don't have to wait to build my environment so I can start messing with the code and fix it. So either a list of steps in like developer guides or a custom script, if you can implement that for your team, to make it easy to improve your local environment. And then using config split for developer settings. So turning on developer modules like Twig debug, Views UI, more robust error messaging, having that so locally you see it. This could also be helpful for having splits for your QA environments as well, or your test environments, so they have this information as well, because that's going to be up on your service provider, your hosting company, so it's even more likely to be close to production. Code reviews can help with developers. You can install IDEs for IDE plugins for linting. This can help catch little bugs and errors in writing code, which can be helpful. Code reviews and peer programming won't catch everything, especially if you have, like Nick had a merge request in Drupal core that was like 500 files. A code review would take forever for that. But it's good to have a process in place so someone should look over what you were trying to do and can ask questions about it. And this could be anybody on the team, regardless of their experience, because junior developers, I highly believe, should be doing code reviews so that they can ask questions and learn, quote unquote, the right way to do things or why you're doing things certain ways. Establish and follow standards for your languages in your framework like Drupal, or for your team. Like, there's standards that you're expecting for everyone to do. Like, you're going to run through the QA testing steps on your environment before you open a pull request. Like, we expect you to do that. And then perform tests. This is going to catch a lot of your bugs. Regression testing. Even just having one like BHAT test that makes sure the homepage is reachable. That will prevent that big impact bug from happening. And if you make that part of your process to run that every time you're making changes, that's going to be helpful. So you can do BHAT, Drupal, test traits. Nightwatch still the JavaScript one?
It's one of them.
It's one of them. Thank you. I don't do as much JavaScript regression testing as I should. So end-to-end testing. So this is like using Cypress, for example, to really run through the interface and interact with elements on the page, or even do comparative change it to see what has changed since you made this update from what the page looked like, and when you made the changes, what it looks like now, and it can flag like big changes. And this could help. So you may have accidentally impacted, like you made it so buttons aren't clickable on CTAs for like the donation page, and then tests for that could catch that even if you weren't expecting it. Manual testing, still a thing. I think it's still important because just solely relying on regression tests and automated tests doesn't catch everything. So making sure any work you're doing has testing steps listed in it, I think is helpful. If you need user acceptance testing as well, say for product managers or less technical users, so that from a business standpoint, they're making sure that the functionality delivers what the business is expecting, which could be different than the actual functionality, but they could see that as a bug. I don't know what I just did. That was full command. But all right. Deployment. Having test environments is going to help with preventing bugs from getting out to production. So set them up on your service provider. Most of them, if you use any sort of major Drupal hosting, like they'll have a QA or a dev environment for you, a test environment, and then the production environment, so that you can push all your changes up to your test environments first, and you're running through those before you deploy them. I think it's very helpful. So deploying them to the test environment first, for example, on my team, when we do a production release, it takes 40 minutes. The actual release to production takes like 10 minutes. The first half hour of that is we're copying down production to our test environment and testing the deployment to the test environment to make sure that all the config changes get imported correctly, everything gets built correctly and compiled correctly. And if that passes, then our script automatically is like, great, this worked. We're going to do it on production. There weren't any major bugs that happened when we tried to deploy these changes. And then run through QA smoke tests. If you're going to make changes, that are going to impact anything that you can see on the website and that users interact with. Following those QA testing steps, you want someone other than developer, if possible, on the test environment to run through those, or you're making the work ready for production. Is something I always think is helpful to do. And depending if you're going to do a big change, like you're upgrading from Drupal 9 to Drupal 10, you may want to do just a general smoke test in your test environment first, just going through as much of the website as you can, because major upgrades can have major impact. Hopefully you've tested that in little increments, but it's always worthwhile just to double check. Automated deployments, which I just mentioned, right? Document your deployment steps at the very least, so that if you're the one who's generally responsible for deploying code to production and you're sick when the bug happens, someone else on the team has steps that they can follow to relatively confidently do it at the very least. If you can reduce the number of manual steps, just like with getting your local environments up to date, if you can reduce the amount of manual steps to do that, it's going to be easier for everyone to do it successfully. So if you can reduce the number of manual steps for your deployment to production so that it happens consistently the right way, that's going to also build up confidence in the team that they can quickly deploy the long-term fix if need be. And as I mentioned, I already shared this story, like test for your production deployments in lower environments first if you can. So copy down production to your test environment, test deploying the code and changes there just to make sure the deployment works as expected and there's no issues with the actual deployment process. That will help prevent any issues, because it'd be really bad. You're deploying to production and your deployment breaks in the middle, and so your website's broken in the middle of that, and then fixing that is much more of a headache. And then solving bugs and preventing bugs using documentation. User guides are really helpful. If people are using your system, document how to use those systems, how to use those tools, how to use your nodes and your views. Well, I guess not really for end users or for editors, you want to do views, but how your components in your Drupal website are expected to be used, because you're going to build something for a specific use case. If it can be used in another way, one of your content editors is going to find a way to use it, and then they're going to report that as a bug. But if you can document like, hey, you're not supposed to use it this way, here's how you're supposed to do this, that can help reduce them from using it incorrectly, producing a bug, which is just an unexpected way to use something. The hardest thing for this is to keep it up to date. What we do on my team in our workflow is after a ticket has gone to production, and we use Jira, during our refinement sessions for each ticket, we list out, does it need is it related to documentation? If so, does it need documentation updates? And we have a documentation column after production that tickets go into and gets assigned usually to the developer who did the work. Like, all right, it's live. You have to make sure you update the documentation. Sometimes we do that beforehand, obviously, because if it's going to directly impact users immediately, we want them to already have the information available. Provide trainings if you can. So again, this is mainly for your site users, your logged in users. If you can train them how to use the system, you set them up on a path for success. So someone on my team, Nate, he is basically our lead trainer. So anyone who's new to the website, who's going to be messing around inside the admin side of things, mainly content editors, which right now, like we have 160 content editors, something like that. They all go through training to understand how to use, from a general standpoint, how to use the system. If we know specifically what they're going to be doing, we focus on that. But this just allows us to tell them how to use the websites, how to use the components we give them. And then also during those trainings, like I mentioned before, we follow up with, here's the documentation review, here's how to reach out if you experience a problem. And then inform your users when large changes have been made. Because if you make a big change, people might freak out and think it's a bug. But if you say, hey, we're going to be releasing, like we're updating our admin theme to be Claro, it's going to look different, which is something eventually my team has to do. We haven't done this yet because I'm hesitant about this part with how many editors we have. If they log in and the admin is looks very different to them, they're going to be like, hey, something's wrong here, and they're going to panic. So we want to prep information for large changes you know are coming to let people know. When we did our Drupal 10 upgrade, even though we tested it so many times for like 2 weeks in a row, lower environments, make sure we do it. We still put out on our status page and our internal channels, be like, hey, at this time, we did this after hours. So at this time, no one should be logged into the website. We're going to upgrade to Drupal 10. We'll let you know when the upgrade is done, just so they were informed in case for some reason at midnight Eastern time, they're logging in, creating content. they wouldn't be freaking out if they saw an error. Developer guides can also be helpful. If you're a one-person shop, this could be good for you as a developer, just to remember what you were doing or your plans for things. But mainly how to set up an environment, your expected development procedures, so steps you expect developers to follow, like using linter. Here's what we expect for your IDEs. Here's what we expect for writing your code comments or your pull request messages and what you should include for details. That'll be helpful information. So people, again, if a bug happens, you can use that to look back what's changed because it's well documented. Expected testing procedures goes with that. Like we expect you to test the QA testing steps before you open up a pull request for this or a merge request. All right, and finally, improvements. This is getting better at solving problems and managing problems after it's happened. So when you see this error, again, there's some questions after you fixed it, either short-term or long-term, usually after the long-term, you want to regroup in like a post-mortem and ask, what would have prevented this bug? How can bugs like this be detected? What needs to be implemented to do so? And then what can be done next time? And none of these questions are to put blame on any one person, because if you're building a website, you're working in a team and everyone's responsible for the success of that website. So you want to approach these as a team, not in a way that's going to point fingers at any one person, but as a way that's moving forward and getting better. So postmortems is the way I like to do this. Again, this is not casting blame on any one person. It's just meeting with everyone involved, like the dev team, obviously, the content editors, if they're directly involved with like website processes, product managers again, and asking those questions. What happened? Why did it happen? What can we improve next time to prevent this from happening? Right? If the homepage went down, we didn't have anything that could test for that. Maybe next time, before we want to build a test to test the website, the homepage is up running, and implement that one little change. Because if you focus on these, then you're going to steadily make small improvements over time, catching more issues before they go to production and building trust in your system. All right, so to recap real quick, effective bug strategy, build trust. It's probably not what you're expecting coming into this, but that's the thing to do, is build trust in the team, in the system, and the processes, so that when something goes wrong, because things are always going to go wrong, people don't freak out about it, and you have the space and the breathing room to actually solve the problem. So maintain communication. After you have communication set up, diagnose and fix the problem, either quick fix or long-term solution. Make steady improvements to your processes to prevent bugs from happening in the first place. And I guess that's it. And thanks. So yeah, these slides are available here. This Bitly link, NedBug24, and this QR code. And we have a few minutes for questions if anyone has any questions.
I'm just curious about the communication part for the devs. So do you guys, in MIT, do you guys set up like New Relic alerts to monitor your site and anything like over certain point and alert your dev channel, and then everyone knows and can, before anyone else noticed?
Yeah, so the question was, do we have any systems set up that will alert the dev team if there are errors happening, like on New Relic? Not in New Relic, but yeah, we do set up, we have a number of tools we use that monitor the websites up and running. Even we're not in IT, but our IT team gets alerts from our domain, if like it's getting a 500 error, and those automatically get sent to a general web email address. So everyone on the dev team gets that email when that happens. And then we go from there. So yeah, we try to set up those, and we've worked on that through like diagnosing problems that have happened in the past, be like what could have prevented this or what alerted us of this sooner. It's setting up those systems. So yeah, we do that for, I forget at the top of my head which services we use. It's not New Relic, but
Pantheon
has New Relic, but we haven't set up the alerts in Pantheon. I get like emails about how things are processing in New Relic, but nothing that alerts me that, hey, this is flashing red, this is bad. Yeah, I totally recommend doing that.
Yeah. Another question is like, do you guys like have a like BCP? We call it BCP, which is like mini sites, like backup sites. Everything happened, crashed, and we redirect to like we redirect.
Yeah, having a backup site, so if the whole thing goes down, you can redirect your traffic to that. We don't have that set up. I have seen that done, which I think can be beneficial. what I've found that has been helpful is with our CDN in place, like especially for end users who they get served up cache content, that can prevent them from seeing a bug really. Like that gives a lot of leeway time. Obviously, logs and users don't see that, and we can't redirect them from there. But yeah, we rely on like the cache version of the website. We haven't had to redirect traffic. Yeah, we haven't had to do that. But one thing we do though is we practice in our documentation as well guidelines for rolling back changes and reverting, like redeploying a backup. So we do nightly database backups, and we have steps in place to be like, how can we make this easy to deploy it if we need to like quickly revert a change? So we do have that in place. So that takes just as long as our usual deployment process. Sometimes it can be shorter. We can circumvent certain steps. So having that practiced.
You talked about code reviews and refinement sessions.
Yes.
What other things do you look at in a refinement session? What's your process?
So our process for refinement, so like everybody, we follow a flavor of Agile and Kanban. So in refinement, usually that's talking with product owners to understand what they're looking for from a ticket, to understand like what functionality they're expecting, not just what they're asking for, so that we can then from there write technical details. And then we do estimation. And during the estimation process, I'll say this right now, we use story points for our estimation. Like we use the Fibonacci numbers. The points don't matter at all. I don't think they matter at all, but what matters is that it gives the whole dev team a chance to talk about the issue or the ticket or the work that needs to be done to make sure everyone understands. Like we go through the technical details and what's expected from the business standpoint. So everyone understands if anyone takes this work on, they already know what's going on. Or they can ask questions then, and we can refine our process or our details in there based on people's feedback. So I like to have those sessions so that when someone's working on something, they know what's expected of it. And so that's not like they misinterpret what had to be done and that gets caught in the bug because they made changes that we weren't expecting from the issue.
And how big is your team?
My team is 5 people, including myself, 3 developers and 1 full-time QA person.
It's fine.
Just 5. I think that's 3 developers, myself, which I do development, and then QA. And then we work with a designer and product owners and whatnot who liaison with the rest of the school for us. Great. Any other questions? All right. Well, thank you for listening to this. I hope this is helpful. I really appreciate feedback on this talk. Maybe not when I'm recording, but no, feedback's a gift. So if any feedback you can give me on this, I greatly appreciate it. Thank you.